Welcome, everyone. Today we're excited to welcome founder and CEO of Dough Confections, Kristen Tomlan. Welcome.
Thank you.
In 2014, Kristen decided to officially launch Dough as she uncovered a market of cookie dough lovers in the world just like herself. The increase in demand soon prompted Kristen to open her first brick-and-mortar experience here in New York City in 2017. Since, Kristen has been a nominee of Crain's 40 Under 40 and received brand praise among publications such as the New York Times, the Oprah magazine, People, and across shows such as Today and CBS This Morning. Today, Kristen has developed over 100 handcrafted flavors, including top sellers such as Signature Chocolate Chip, which is my favorite, Cake Batter, Heavenly, and Confetti, some of which she will showcase here at Google today. So how did Dough start? Like, where did this idea come from?
So I had been a cookie dough lover my entire life. I learned the ins and out of the kitchen from my mom, who is a baker and a chef. I grew up in St. Louis, so from the Midwest. And we made everything from scratch, and so cookies were no different. I would love sharing just anything sugary with others for birthdays or any occasion. And any time that we baked cookies at home, it was a requirement to save my dad a Tupperware container of cookie dough so that when he came home and saw the fresh baked cookies on the counter, he immediately went to the fridge and got the cookie dough. And even though we weren't supposed to eat cookie dough, it was worth the risk for me growing up, and it just continued to be kind of a secret obsession of mine, throughout college. I always had a tub of, Toll House or whatever I could get my hands on. And even after college, I was continuing to bake. I was working here in New York City, and I treated cookie dough like it was ice cream. So I would keep some in my fridge at all times and take it out, by the spoonful a little bit and then stick the container back. So that was my experience with cookie dough. But I came up with the idea for dough when I was with a bunch of girlfriends. We were visiting a friend in graduate school at Villanova, and we happened to go to this cookie shop, and they had a ton of fresh baked cookies and all sorts of flavors. And I had wandered over to their freezer section, and they were selling their cookie dough and chocolate chip for you to, of course, go home and bake. But I turned to my friends and said, hey, will anybody split this with me? I kind of just want the cookie dough.
I'm sure no one said no.
Of course not. So everybody decided to just walk out of there without buying anything that was actually baked. And at that time, it wasn't really acceptable to sit in their cute little shop and eat the cookie dough from the container. So we sat in the car, and then we continued on with our shopping or whatever we were doing, and we were, are we going to get sick? Are we going to feel terrible later? We didn't really care. We just finished the whole thing, just licking our fingers, no shame, good girlfriends, and that was the moment. We were in the car, and I thought, why isn't this a thing? Why can't you go to a store and just eat the cookie dough? We all just wanted to do it. Everybody does it.
And anyone that's actually gotten sick.
I don't know anybody that doesn't like the cookie dough or doesn't try it when they're baking. And so that was the moment, kind of the light bulb for me that was like, maybe this could be a thing. Maybe cookie dough could be a dessert on its own. And so that started me on my quest to develop this brand and develop this product that was completely safe to eat and bakeable. So you have the option to do both.
Wow.
So then I decided to launch the business online to just test the market first, because I had no idea how to start a business, let alone run a retail store, which was the original idea. So I launched it online to test it, and then from there, once that was successful and I saw that there really was this market of cookie dough lovers that I knew coming out of the woodwork, I decided to open up the store in 2017, and that kind of catapulted the business to the next level.
And I remember I ordered some for my team, and we waited 6 weeks to get it. I ordered it online.
Yeah,
and it was
you're so patient. Thank you.
In a second, yeah.
I always meet people that say, especially when we first opened, I waited 3 hours in line, and I know, they waited in the cold or they waited in the rain. Yeah. And I always tell people, thank you so much. I'm so happy that we have such great fans and supporters and so many cookie dough lovers.
What are we gonna make today?
Okay, so today we're gonna make one of our most popular flavors. It is our Brookie dough, which you guys have in front of you. It's a combination of a cookie and a brownie, so that's why we call it the Brookie. Yeah, you can't go wrong at all. It actually started as a seasonal flavor, so we have 20 different flavors at our shop, and for those of you who haven't been, who don't want to wait in line, it's set up like an ice cream experience. So I wanted to create something that was familiar enough so everyone knows when you go into an ice cream store, you can get it by the scoop, you can add toppings, you can get it in a cup or a cone, you can even make a milkshake out of it, whatever you want to do. But instead of ice cream, it is all cookie dough. And 2 of the flavors change every single month, and we love to have fun depending on the season and trying new flavors and always taking requests from fans about what we should have. And we decided to have this flavor, Brookie dough, as a seasonal for the month. It's just our chocolate chip and our brownie batter swirled together in one. And it was immediately one of the most popular flavors, which doesn't always happen with the seasonal because chocolate chip is like, usually people go for the classic ones. And we took a vote on social media and everyone wanted Brookie to stay on the menu, so we decided to keep it. So now it's on our regular menu. So I'm going to show you guys today how to make these 2 flavors, how to combine them, and then actually the Brookie dough originally, since we opened the shop, was a bar. So it is a brownie on the bottom, it's chocolate chip cookie dough on top, and then it's topped with chocolate ganache. So that was kind of the inspiration for the flavor in the first place. So we're gonna make the dough version, we're gonna make the actual Brookie, and top it with chocolate ganache, and then fill you guys with all sorts of sugar.
All right, well, I'll let you.
How's that sound? Good. Thank you guys for having me. Thank you for coming. I hope you are ready to eat some cookie dough and have some sugar for breakfast. I want this to be very interactive, so if anyone has questions at any time, grab the mic and ask away. For me, cooking and baking is an experience that I fell in love with because I got to share it with others. I love baking and cooking with others in the kitchen and then sharing those treats and seeing the smile that it puts on people's faces. So please, if you guys have anything, want to get involved, get your hands dirty, let me know. But yes, like you said, thank you for the introduction. My name's Kristen Tomlan, the founder and CEO. I started the business in 2014 when I was still working full-time at a brand consultant here in New York. So my old job, which I used to call like my real job, and then this was my fake job, and then now it's kind of switched. I used to work in brand experience design. So I was a designer for a consultant, and I got to work with amazing brands like BMW and Samsung and Walmart, and I was developing their customer experience. So innovating that experience and really working through how to stay new and different. And I really used that expertise as I was developing this brand to understand, what are the unique points of the customer journey, what are all the interactions. So a lot of people assume that I, went to business school or, had investors or any sort of thing. I had no idea how to start this business, and I did it by trial, and the only things I knew in the beginning were about branding and about baking, so I started there. The first recipe I ever developed was our signature chocolate chip. All of our recipes come from old family recipes that have been in my family for years and years, and then we've modified them to make sure that they're safe to eat and that they're also bakeable. So, should we get to it? Awesome. We're going to start with, like I said, chocolate chip, which every one of our cookie doughs, except for the vegan flavors, start with good old-fashioned butter. We use 100% real butter. We don't use any sort of margarine or, Crisco or anything fake. Butter is better, always. It gives your cookies and your cookie dough a really rich flavor, which we like. And also, is, for me, makes every cookie, you can really taste, I like that buttery taste. So that's exactly what we use. We use unsalted butter. So a lot of people don't know that actually salted butter typically has a higher moisture content because of that salt. And you don't want that moisture in your cookies. You want it to be super fudgy and dense. So Don't use the salted kind. You also have more control over how much salt you put in your cookie dough, which is exactly what you want when you're baking. This has been softened, so I've just left it on the counter to get to room temperature. This is gonna be the base of what we're making, so we want it to be nice and smooth and creamy before we add any other ingredients. So I'm just gonna leave it in here. If you read a recipe that says cream the butter, it's exactly what we're doing. I always recommend using a mixer. If you don't have a stand mixer, use a hand mixer. Just makes your life a lot easier. Then it'll allow the flavors to really come together and make sure that, you know, the butter and the sugars are creaming, which are incredibly important when you're making cookies.
Hi, so I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've always, like, whenever I watch the cooking shows or the restaurant shows, one of the most interesting things is like the sourcing of ingredients, because the chefs get up at like 5 a.m. and go to the, well, that's even pretty late to get up, go to the fishmongers, buy these fish that you can't ever buy as a home cook. And so what I'm wondering is, like, even with things like butter, like there's 1,000 different brands of butter. How do I, as a home chef, or how did you as in your role, like, source your ingredients and say, oh, this is the best butter for me to use, not that other brand of butter or whatever?
Yeah, so a lot of testing goes into all of our recipes, and even from the beginning. So the type of butter that we use is an American butter. It's not a European butter. It depends on, you know, how much fat content you want. Unfortunately, we're not, you know, going to the farmer's market fresh and getting the cultured butter that's from the farmer. I wish we could. But butter for me, you know, anytime that we can do local, organic, you know, we try our best. And then it was just a matter of a lot of testing. So there's a ton of different sugars, a ton of different flours that you can add in baking, you know, vanillas, extracts, all of that stuff. And I'll talk through some of the importance of the other ingredients as we go through it and why we chose certain ones. But because our cookie dough is edible and bakeable, it's a lot about the texture of how things come together when you're eating it raw and when you're baking it. It's not just one or the other. And then also for us in any food business, you know, perishability is obviously something that, you know, we need to think about. And so making sure that our ingredients are top quality to make sure that they will last for consumers in the fridge and in the freezer, and all of the ways that we recommend cooking them or eating them. So we got the butter, the best part. Next, we're gonna add the sugar. So this particular recipe uses a combination of white sugar, which is granulated sugar, and brown sugar. For those of you who don't know, brown sugar is white sugar with added molasses. More molasses, you have a darker sugar, so dark brown sugar just has more molasses. For this, we're gonna use light brown sugar. And it uses 75% brown sugar. So the brown sugar is typically what people mostly associate with eating chocolate chip cookie dough. It's that molassesy flavor that most people love and is, you know, super nostalgic. So we really up the amount of brown sugar that we use in this recipe. We use 75% brown sugar and 25% white sugar. The white sugar is going to help things spread, and the brown sugar is going to be an acid in this recipe, and it's going to mix with a base that we're going to add later. So cooking is a little bit of chemistry, or baking at least is a little bit of chemistry. It's not as easy to just like dump a little bit of this and a little bit of that and substitute, you know, here and there. So what we're doing is just creaming the butter and sugar. We want to just let this go and get nice and smooth. We want it to be all one color and all one texture. The sugar are these little granules, and what you want to do when you're making cookie dough is you want to envision just coating each one of those little things of sugar with butter evenly, and just making sure it's nice, smooth texture.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Since you've had so much success from your first store opening in 2017, do you have any plans to franchise?
We get thousands of requests to franchise, especially since we've opened, which is amazing because it just means that so many other people, you know, relate to this concept and can see it being popular in their city or their town. right now, we are so busy, and my team is so busy that I don't want to take a minute of our time to figure out the franchising. I think we'll do a few more company-owned stores before we actually franchise it out. This is very much like my baby, and I have a very hard time letting go of, handing it over to somebody else to just kind of run with it. And that would always be my worry with franchising, but I will never say never to anything. Always keeping options open, so I certainly think that it could be a possibility down the line. Okay, so we got the butter and sugar. The next ingredients that we're gonna add are our liquid ingredients. And I wanna talk about these for a couple reasons. One, going back to your sourcing question, our vanilla, we use 100% vanilla, pure vanilla extract. It comes from Madagascar. We have tested a ton of vanilla, some from Mexico, some from Tahiti. And Madagascar for us is really the best of the best. So I always recommend when you're baking and for at-home chefs, to go for the good vanilla. It will yield a better, smoother flavor in whatever you're baking. And typically a bottle of it at home will go a long way because you only use a teaspoon or a tablespoon here or there. So it is expensive, but it is really worth it. We use even more vanilla in this recipe because we like that flavor, how it mixes with the brown sugar. So that is why this liquid is brown. The other ingredient in here is our egg. Most people assume that because our cookie dough is safe to eat, I'm just gonna very slowly pour this in to avoid it spraying up in my face and giving me an egg facial. Good. The other ingredient is the egg. So most people assume that our cookie dough is safe to eat. We just eliminate the egg and therefore you're good to go. You can just eat it from the bowl. That's actually not the case at all. There are other ingredients in cookie dough that I'll talk about in a bit that can make you sick besides just eating raw eggs. In the United States, as many of you know, salmonella would be the bacteria that you could get from eating raw eggs. But our eggs are completely safe to eat. They're good in this cookie dough, and you could put it in your smoothie if you wanted more protein. It's been pasteurized, so that means it's been heated to a specific temperature to kill the bacteria and then cooled back down. And it retains its normal properties of an egg. So if you were to stick this in a hot saucepan, it would make scrambled eggs, which people are always surprised about. But in cookie dough, we don't want to make scrambled eggs. We want it to be used as a binding agent. So it's going to keep everything together. It's also going to add some extra flavor that you otherwise would miss. When I was recipe testing, I tried every egg substitute out there. And every single time, it never stood up to the real egg, the real deal. So I decided to scrap all of those substitutes and find an egg that was completely safe to eat. So that is our egg. That's the liquid ingredients, which we just added. And now we want to just whip it until it's really light and fluffy to make sure that all gets incorporated. This mixer is great. I'm not having to scrape it down at all because the bowl is really high. But sometimes when you're baking, you might have to stop, scrape things down just to get it all incorporated. So when I originally started the business, I was, like I said, I was working full time. And I think I was nervous because no one else had really done this. And we get so many people now that are like, oh, why didn't I think of this? This is such a great idea. Like, everybody's been eating cookie dough. But when I first started the business, I didn't know, honestly, if it was really gonna work. I thought, maybe this hasn't been done before because it can't be done. Maybe people won't respond to it well. Maybe there is this, stigma that even if through education, people won't be able to get over the egg thing or the worry of getting sick. It's just a completely different model from an ice cream store or a traditional bakery. So it was difficult as I was working on this business plan to try and figure out, how it would work and, what would be popular and what wouldn't be popular. So that's why I decided to start it online and just take baby steps, kind of get my feet wet with the production and understanding what the market looks like. And luckily, the market was amazing, almost from the beginning. I think with the power of social media and people sharing what they're doing, especially this foodie culture in New York, it really worked to our advantage. And it's been a really crazy ride, but really fun. Next ingredients we're gonna add, so it's a small amount of questionable white powder. It's all legal substances. The first thing is really easy to understand. It is our sea salt. So we use sea salt. It's a less refined salt, so it has a little bit of mineralities in it, which we like. And additionally, it is going to be baking soda. So baking soda is the base in this specific recipe. It's going to mix with the acid that is the molasses and the brown sugar. It's going to create carbon dioxide. Without boring you, it will help your cookies rise in the oven. If you put too much baking soda in your cookie dough, it's going to taste like a bar of soap or like baking soda toothpaste, which is the worst. So you have to really balance how much you're putting in to make sure that it's reacting, and make sure you don't taste it in the actual cookie dough. And then the third ingredient, one of our secrets is a little bit of cornstarch. So cornstarch is going to be also used as a binding agent and as a leavener. So we like our cookies when they bake to be extra super soft. I'm not a thin, crunchy cookie kind of gal, and you won't find thin, crunchy cookies at Dough. You will find nice and thick, kind of crispy on the outside with that golden brown outside and nice and gooey and chewy on the inside. And that cornstarch in the cookie dough will allow you to get that soft baked cookie texture. So I'm gonna just add these in now. You can whisk it together with your flour, but I'm gonna just do it first just to make sure it's really well incorporated in the dough. Because it is a small amount of stuff, you just want to make sure it's evenly distributed so that those reactions can happen and all of those flavors are really coming together.
So I'm really curious. You're sort of targeting both, making them delicious when they're baked and making them delicious as cookie dough. And are there trade-offs here where you could maybe make more delicious cookie dough by not making them as good when they're baked, or vice versa?
So when I was experimenting, or actually when I was before I even came up with the idea, there were specific recipes that we would make at home with my mom that were really good as cookie dough and not as good as cookies, or vice versa, really good as cookies and not as good as cookie dough. But my dad wanted the good stuff, and we always baked it and we always kept it raw, and so we found a recipe that was the perfect mix of both. And so that is kind of the recipe that we went off of for the development. I think that there could be ways, depending on how rich you want it or the consistency that you want it. But for me, what was important is to really give people a full-on cookie dough experience. So a lot of people, when they eat our dough with a spoon, they're surprised, like, oh, this tastes just like cookie dough. And I'm like, yeah, it is cookie dough. It's exactly what it is. It's much more rich than an ice cream. It's more dense. So if you were to stick any of our cookie dough in the oven, it would bake. So I always tell people, if you save it for later, if you can't finish it, it'll last in the fridge or the freezer. You can always take it home and bake it, or mix it with ice cream, and that way you don't have to. I was always the one picking around the ice cream and just eating the cookie dough out, and then leaving the rest for my husband to basically have a pint of vanilla ice cream, which no one actually wants. So. Next ingredient. So I'm going to talk about the flour. So as most people know, the eggs, eating raw eggs could be harmful. There could be salmonella. Don't eat cookie dough. We've heard all of that. What a lot of people don't know is that raw flour could also harbor bacteria. So if you think about it, flour is a raw agricultural ingredient. So it's grown in the field somewhere, and there's really not a ton of control over what birds fly over, or what critters may or may not crawl in. And typically during the milling process, when you harvest the wheat and you make it into flour, there isn't a step in that process which kills any potentially harmful bacteria that those critters could have left behind, which is gross to think about. It then goes to you, sits on your counter for 6 months. That bacteria continues to harbor. But as soon as you cook it, you bake it, you fry it, you heat it in a pan, whatever you're doing, that's the kill step that kills that potentially harmful bacteria. So you don't even know if your flour had bacteria or not, because you heated it. But with the rise of people eating cookie dough and brownie batter and cake batter, more people are licking the spoon, and the bacteria is not from the egg, it comes from the flour. So that obviously poses a risk for people at home. So we did such an extensive amount of research. We actually were one of the first people to bring this to the New York market. So some of the large cookie dough and other manufacturers were using heat-treated flour when I started this business in 2014, but it was nearly impossible to get as a small, producer that our minimum, we didn't have room to have pallets and pallets of this, not let alone go through it all. So that was one of the biggest challenges as I was starting the business, is finding a distributor to carry the product, bring it in specifically for us so that we could make our cookie dough safe to eat. So the flour that we're using is a heat-treated flour. It's been through the process, like the pasteurization process, to make sure that all of that bacteria no longer exists. It's tested like the egg is tested before it comes to us. And then, again, it's just like a normal flour. So you can use it in your cookie dough and you don't have to worry about getting sick. The other unique thing about this specific flour is that we make our own blend of AP flour. So there are a ton of different flours out there. Two basic ones, mostly boils down to a hard flour and a soft flour. And the difference between those flours are about where they're grown, and when they're harvested, and how much gluten is in those flours. So all-purpose flour is a mix of both. Soft flour is also known as cake flour and is really great for anything that you want to be light and fluffy, like French pastries or cake. The other kind, hard flour, has a higher gluten content and is great for breads and pizza dough. It's going to give you that stretchiness that everyone loves to kind of bite into. And for cookies, you just want to use a mix of both of those so that your cookies aren't too dainty and crumbly, and you also, they're not too tough or stretchy. So we mix our own proprietary blend of all-purpose flour in-house. It was a process that we tested extensively to have the exact texture that we want for the cookie dough and for the cookies. So that is what we have here. It is our blend of AP flour. It's heat treated. And I'm just going to add this in little by little. You don't really notice any sort of taste difference in the heat treated. You might notice, if you smell it, a little bit of a toasted flavor, because that's essentially what they're doing when they're heat treating it. But when it's mixed with all of the other ingredients in cookie dough, you would never notice any difference whatsoever. So we'll add this little by little. This is the final step. The recipe that we're making technically is in the category of cookies called a drop cookie recipe. And a drop cookie recipe is a recipe that most people make at home and most people are used to eating or sneaking from the bowl. It's the kind of cookie that you drop on a sheet and then bake. You don't have to roll it out, you don't have to cut it out, you don't have to do all of these other things that some other cookies, pipe or anything else. And drop cookie recipes are great because they're pretty easy to go together once you have all of the ingredients measured out, which is, half the battle. You just throw it in a mixer like this, similar to, you always start with the fat, in our case, butter. Then you do sugars, liquid ingredients, and then dry ingredients. And the good thing is it all comes together, and you really, it's hard to mess up if you've measured correctly. The only thing you can do is over mix it. So once it's good, you can just keep going along with the process, and especially once you add the flour in, because the flour adds the gluten. Once it's mixed, you can just be done, and you don't have to let it keep going forever and ever. Like you would potentially with a meringue or with whipped cream or something. You don't need to add any extra air because we want our cookies to be nice and dense and fudgy. And the more you mix it, the more it activates that gluten and your cookies can get tough. Did you have another question?
All right, yeah.
What's your name, by the way?
My name is James.
Hey.
Yeah. So you've came in with the recipes from when you were growing up and also through developing them, as you started thinking about the business, and you had the marketing knowledge from your previous work, but one of the things I've always heard is that one of the hardest parts about building a restaurant is the actual business, the accounting, are we actually making a profit right now? How do we control costs and get the right number of workers and so on and so forth? So have you just picked that up as you've gone along, or did you have some previous experience in running business?
No previous business experience. Luckily, my husband did go to business school. Not that business school teaches you how to run a business. He always says, he's like, this taught me nothing. But it is helpful, to kind of have a sidekick in that has at least been to school. Not that I didn't graduate college and all of these things. But to be honest, for me, it was a lot of just figuring out as I go. I always tell people, especially new entrepreneurs, like there's never a point that you feel prepared or feel ready to start any sort of business. Like you're never gonna have it all figured out. So just do something to move forward and you will learn. If you are smart, if you are a hard worker, if you have a network of people that you can ask, and honestly, google.com is like your best friend, literally. There's so many resources out there to find information, and for me, it was incredibly helpful to start with baby steps. And so starting online first, figuring that out, learning, hiring a few people and learning out how to, manage that and manage production and ordering and online before I even opened the store. And that's part of the reason why I launched online, was because the thought of opening up a restaurant in New York City without any business experience or operation experience was incredibly daunting. And I was looking at, the investment was going to be insane. And I didn't want to be one of those businesses that opened and then, or restaurants that you see all the time, that it's a great location, it's a great idea, maybe the execution is even pretty good, but it just, 6 months later the doors are closed because they just can't make it work. It's incredibly difficult. But I did use, the experience. I launched in 2014, and then, didn't open the store 2017. So. But even then, when we first opened the store, I had no idea about the popularity or like really an expectation. I thought it was going to be popular. Like I told my old boss, I was like, maybe this could be the next big thing in desserts. Like cupcakes have kind of come and gone. This is when I was working on this idea in 2012. It was like, so I was like, maybe this could be the next thing. And I didn't know. So I had story is I had 5 full-time people when I moved to the new store, and they all were working in the kitchen, and one other like assistant who did a little bit of everything, business and kitchen and everything. And then when I opened up the store, so we basically were moving our kitchen, and then we had this new front of house element, and so I thought, okay, I'll hire 5 more people to help, just work as hourly employees in the front. And then all of us, the people in the back and me included, can pop in and out and like work up front and just make sure that everything's running smoothly. Like I'm fine, checking people out or doing whatever we need to do. My husband was like, you can't afford 5 people. You can only hire 4. So I'm like, fine, okay, I'll hire 4 people. And even then, I mean, we spent essentially all of the money that we had made in the first 2 years on this new lease, new build out, new equipment, new everything. Because for me, I was like, I'm just gonna go big or go home. Like I didn't want to keep doing what I was doing with just the online orders and like, this really small business. I really wanted to see where it was gonna go and just kind of give it my all. Sounds terrifying. It was incredibly terrifying, yeah. And so we hired these 4 people, and when we opened, there was a line down the block, and I was like, how did these people, like, what's going on, And then I thought, we had, I think there was a news article in New York Magazine, so I was like, oh, they probably, learned about it through there, and then as soon as these people come and go, it'll be, like, quiet. Which it was for, like, a small amount of time. People, like, trickled in all day when we first opened. We opened on a Wednesday. I don't even, that whole time is like a blur to me. I don't think I slept for months. So we opened on a Wednesday, and then my family came to visit that first weekend to kind of celebrate the opening. And in my mom's typical fashion, she had theater tickets and dinners planned and like all this stuff. And on Thursday, we opened up and the store was like slammed. Wednesday, we like ran out of a ton of stuff. We were staying up all night trying to like remake it to open on Thursday. And I called my mom on Thursday. I was like, cancel all your plans. Like, I need you guys to help work in the store. Like, I don't know what's happening, but like, I just need help. And my family is, they're all bakers and cooks and like, good Midwestern folk, like they'll, roll their sleeves up and get their hands dirty anytime. So they came on, I think, Thursday night, and immediately I put them to work. And so it was the 4 employees that I hired: my dad, my brother, my brother-in-law, my 2 sisters, my mom, and we all took turns. Like, part of us were in the front, part of us in the back. We were just making cookie dough. My brother-in-law did like dishes for 8 hours straight. The poor guy. Love you, James. And my parents, my dad scooped cookie dough. They had like carpal tunnel by the end of the weekend, and they were like, we have got to get out. And that was a weekend that there were 4-hour lines down the block and around the corner, and we didn't know what was going on. I mean, that was just the very beginning. We ran out of all of our ingredients, like all of our cookie dough. Anything that was edible was like gone. And anything that, was, we just ran out of every single thing. Like, we had no flour, and our flour, you can't just like go to the grocery store and get our flour or our eggs. So we had to wait. This was the weekend, so you couldn't put an order until Monday. So we had to wait until Tuesday to get everything. So I'm gonna start on the next one while I'm talking. So it was kind of, to be honest, a shit show. But I learned a lot in those first few weeks, and then we closed the store. We had to, because we didn't have anything to sell, for the first couple, for a Sunday and a Monday, and that I put up as many ads as I could. And then people would walk in, and I'd be like, okay, do you like cookie dough? Do you know anything about cookie dough? Okay, you can speak clearly, great. Are you available? Great, you have availability. Can you scoop cookie dough? Okay, show me that you can use your hands. You're hired. Like, that was basically the process in the beginning, which was, worked for a time, and was great. But obviously we have such a great staff now that we're like settled and established. But that team of 10, I guess, or 9 went immediately to, within the first like 4 weeks after we opened, to about 60 people. We started running multiple shifts. We were basically in the kitchen from 5 a.m. until midnight or 1 a.m. And then we were cleaning from 2 to 4, and then the team would come back at 5, and it was just like around the clock, and really it was a struggle for many, many weeks until we were able to get our facility in the Bronx open and running. Because not only did we not have enough people, we didn't have enough space. Like, we didn't have enough refrigeration. We didn't have enough of anything, so we had to kind of move off site and immediately start looking at other options. What I'm making now is our brownie batter. So what I just put in was melted chocolate, semi-sweet chocolate, and butter. That's gonna be the base of this. So this one is super fudgy, really like a chocolate lover's dream. And I'm just mixing it with the brown sugar again and the white sugar. So this is gonna be the base of that brookie, and then also obviously the brownie part of the recipe. This one is dangerous because this is a recipe that I can sit and eat like so much of, and suddenly I'm like, what happened? Like, who ate it? Where did it go? You'll like scrape the bottom of the container, especially when it's nice and warm, and it disappears in an instant. So I guess my love for unbaked things is like goes far beyond just cookie dough. I also love brownie batter. I love cake batter. Anything that is like not fully baked, kind of gooey in the middle, is like my jam. Actually, when I was babysitting, I used to do a ton of babysitting when I was growing up, and there were this family I babysat down the street. They have 5 kids, and it was like madness at all times. I usually had one of my siblings like with me, and the one way to occupy their attention was to make brownies. So I would get 2 boxes of brownies, sit the kids down, we would like have a mix. One box would not have the egg in it. At this point, this was so long ago, no one really kind of knew about the flour thing. And I would make one box without the egg and just put it in bowls, and the kids would eat the bowls of brownie batter. And then the other box I would actually make into brownies so that when the mom came home, there was like something nice and, fresh baked, and also just even though sugar probably wasn't the right thing to give a bunch of rambunctious kids, it was like just our routine. Every, Saturday or whenever I would babysit, we would make 2 boxes of brownies. And so this recipe, even though it's a cookie recipe, it is very much like the brownie texture and flavor. It's super fudgy with that melted chocolate. Other ingredients are going to be cocoa powder, and then those leaveners again, and the sea salt. So this is all going to go in the mixer.
I have a question. It seems like you've kind of built a cookie dough market in New York that didn't exist before, which is really awesome. But now that you've proved the concept, I noticed a competitor down the street kind of sprung up. So has that changed your business at all?
Honestly, no. It hasn't really changed the business. Obviously, we were the first of our kind to make this concept and show that it could really work, especially in New York. And for us, we've been so laser focused and so busy on growing the business and continuing to expand in a number of different ways that I don't have time to really pay attention to competitors. Of course, I'm aware that they exist. And for me, I think that this concept, like I said, how it could be kind of the next big thing in desserts, I think that there's a lot of the pie to go around. And because we have this presence in New York, which is amazing, I'm encouraging other people and other cookie dough lovers to, obviously follow their passions. And if they think that their town could use a cookie dough shop, that only works better for me as I continue to expand and more people learn about this cookie dough trend. And people always ask oh, are you worried about the people here, the people there, or these people are ripping you off, or they're taking your this, and yeah, I don't really have time to what am I going to do? Copy the people who are copying me, a shittier version of myself? That is a terrible idea. Who has time for that? So yeah, we're continuing to expand. We are serving more people than ever. We have, I don't know if you guys ever go to Mets games. We have a couple stands at Citi Field, which are really fun, so you can get some cookie dough at the ballpark. We also are doing a number of different pop-ups this summer. So we've got our Camp Cookie Dough, which is at Chef's Club counter in Soho. It is a summer camp themed cookie dough store. So when we had this opportunity to do something for the summer there, we thought, obviously cookie dough is nostalgic and it brings everybody back to their childhood, and that's why I think people have this emotional connection to what they're eating. People also have the same nostalgia, especially in New York, for summer camp. So we thought, why don't we just kind of blow this concept up and have all of the desserts centered around childhood favorites. All of them, of course, include cookie dough, but all of them also include soft serve ice cream, and it's a really fun experience. We have a pop-up in Montauk for the summer for anybody who's out east, Washington, D.C., and Chicago all this summer. So all sorts of fun stuff going on. And we just launched, ta-da, our new baking kits. So they're actually coming out in August, but we just debuted them at Fancy Food the other week. And the 3 flavors for that are going to be chocolate chip brownie batter, which are the 2 I'm making today, and then sugar cookie. And that mix, it comes in a box like this. You just add 2 ingredients and then everything else is ready to go. The nice thing about this product is that it's shelf stable. If I were to ever start another food business, perishability is so, in refrigeration and freezing is obviously incredibly difficult. So this is nice because it has a long shelf life. It can go in grocery stores across the United States. Obviously it has our name all over it and is a natural kind of brand extension. In addition, we continue to ship online all over the United States, and we have a pretty robust catering and event business in New York and, that we ship nationwide, and then we also, go to offices and do little cookie dough bars. And then at our store, one of the most fun things about my job is just interacting with customers and teaching people all of the things that I've learned over the years. So we just started this baking school program. It's called the Cookie Academy. And you can take cookie dough making and baking classes in our store. So I think we're almost good. What I'm gonna do here is just turn on this, if I can get it. Okay, so we've got all I'm gonna make here is the ganache to top this brookie. So what we've got is we've got our brownie batter, which is nice and gooey, tastes exactly like brownie batter. And we've got our chocolate chip cookie dough. So in order to make the brookie, what we would do, which we're not gonna do right this second, is we would take this, we would press it down in a pan and we would bake it. So the bottom is a full-on brownie. Then we would add a layer of chocolate chip on top of that once it's cooled, and then stick that back in the oven until it gets nice and gooey and is not fully baked. And then it gets topped off with the chocolate ganache. So we're gonna do the ganache element. Ganache sounds fancy. It's not. It's very easy, but it's really also super delicious. So all you're gonna do is you're gonna heat up heavy cream. If you can do it in the microwave, it makes it even easier. Okay. And then you're just gonna pour it over the chocolate chips and let it set, and then we'll whisk it together. But to make the actual brookie flavor, what we do, since we scoop the cookie dough out of what looks like gelato containers, we would add dollops of both of these different flavors in the same container and then kind of swirl it around. So if you guys can tell from the little jars we have in front of you that we like being able to see the chocolate chip cookie dough and the brownie batter cookie dough, so it's not like a full mix. It's really like a swirl technique. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna fold in, I'll do it in here because it'll be a little bit easier to see. I'm going to just take some of this brownie batter and just add a few dollops in here. And then we'll just swirl it around and we'll have some fresh brookie dough.
When you do the little cups, do you do equal parts chocolate chip and brownie?
Yeah, we do. Those cups are, everything's filled by hand. So they might have some of them might have a little bit more of one or the other, but we try to do it really evenly. And I only stirred it 1 or 2 times, and you get this nice ribbon technique, and we would leave it just like this. If we were going to bake this into cookies, all I would do is refrigerate this cookie dough, put saran wrap over it, stick it in the fridge for as long as I can, at least 24 hours, and then I would just scoop it out with a cookie scoop right on a sheet tray and 350 in the oven for about 10 minutes. They make really delicious cookies. So that's what we got. We got our brookie dough, and then let's see how we're doing with this heavy cream. Okay, I'm just gonna get this to a boil and then turn it down. You guys have any questions in the meantime? Anything else I didn't cover?
Hi. In this sort of health-crazed market,
Yeah.
how do you sort of combat that or help people to limit the amount if that's something you are doing?
Yeah, so obviously, I get that question a lot. Everyone's like, oh, it's not just gluten-free or vegan this and trying to be healthy. People are just trying to eliminate, fats and sugars and all those things from their diet. Certainly we have gluten-free flavors and vegan flavors and all of that, which are equally as delicious. But I also think that there's a moment in life to treat yourself and to have a little bit of fun and indulge in something that makes you happy. So you all work very hard. I work very hard. Everybody has, lives, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world that is not pleasant. And so if there's a moment that you can just put a smile on your face and treat yourself to whatever makes you happy. Maybe that's a yoga class, maybe that's a spoonful of cookie dough, maybe it's an ice cream cone, maybe it's none of those things and it's your own personal choice. That's what I'm all about, is just making sure that we're putting a smile on your face and allowing you to indulge in something that you really love. So even with all the health craze, trust me, I have to go to SoulCycle way too often because I eat cookie dough all day. But I do think that there's a moment where you deserve a little treat and something to smile. So.
Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah, of course.
When was that tipping point or that moment where you were like, I need to make this my full-time job and it's really time to leave your brand background?
So this is just really coming to a slow boil, and As soon as you see those bubbles, you can take it off. And all I'm going to do is pour it over this chocolate and just let it sit for a second. So I was working full-time. I was living the consultant life, which is just a difficult life because you're traveling, you're on the site with the client, et cetera. And so when I started this business, my boss knew I was starting it. And so once things were kind of taking off, I went to him and I was like, Randall, I was like, I don't know what is going on, but I just feel like I need to dedicate more time to this business and like trying to figure it out. And I don't know at what point, people like quit their jobs or don't, but like, I don't know that I want to quit my job. Like, it was very conflicting for me. And so he was so nice and so encouraging. And so originally I went down to working 2 days a week and had a really flexible schedule, which helped me dedicate more time to the business. And I also, was only on one final client commitment. And as that started wrapping up, it still, even working 2 days a week was too much. And I found myself just really wanting to work on the business and it taking up every hour of my day. And my poor husband, hadn't slept either. So I just went back and I was like, look, as much as I love my job and as much as this has been such an amazing experience, I'd been there for 5 years. I feel like now's the time to kind of take a step and see where this goes, and have never looked back since then. But it wasn't easy. It was difficult. Very difficult. That was about 6 weeks after I had launched online. So, yeah.
What about for people who are kind of skeptics that think this is a fad, and how do you keep it relevant?
Yeah. Okay, so I always tell people I obviously did not invent cookie dough. So cookie dough's been around for a very, very long time, and cookies in general are such an American dessert. That people that have grown up with since the 1800s, as like when the chocolate chip cookie, really came to be. And so I'm not pretending like I'm created something new, but what I think I'm doing, I'm making a huge mess, that's what I'm doing, is kind of reinventing it and making it new and different, and serving it in a different way, obviously. Which I think has a lot of legs because the nostalgia factor. So it's rare that you find something that so many people can relate to on this like emotional level, because it reminds them of their mom or their grandmother, and nostalgia goes a long way. But I also recognize that fads come and go and desserts come and go, and so I think it's continuing to listen to our customers and continuing to innovate and find new ways to expand the brand. And so I'm not really concerned. I don't think cookies are going away anytime soon. I don't think cookie dough is going away. So I think as long as we're continuing to stay relevant and be new and different and innovate the experience, I think that cookie dough can go a long way.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It has been so great to have you here. And
thank you.
We cannot wait to eat this.
Yeah, dig in.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.